Hello, everybody. Welcome to Guiding Abundance. I'm Sam with Arla and Marcia Moore. So,
hey,
hello.
All right. I'm going to try and stay on top of questions if I can. If I can't, I'm sorry.
All
right.
We can't answer them. I'm sorry.
Yeah. All right. So, Marcia, can you tell us a little bit about how you got into everything that you do?
Well, I've been an artist for a very long time. And I mean, I know you're specifically talking about all the kind of the research end of this, what I'm doing.
Yeah.
When I was in Florida, I had started a story, kind of a hopeful animation, and I was creating all the characters. And as I was doing that, all of this information was kind of coming through Florida. There's so much there's ancient history everywhere, but Florida is really an undiscovered area with all
Right.
of our pre-Spanish and our Mound Builders, and there's so much going on there, as with all of the southeast of this country.
Right.
So I was creating this story, and as I'm creating some of the characters, I noticed that a lot of the characters had elongated craniums. They had elongated heads. I'm just going to show you this so people know what the heck I'm talking about here.
Okay.
And this was actually one of the characters, the first one that I developed. And
Okay.
I had no idea that this existed. I was just creating these characters, and it just felt kind of good to create this head shape. It felt natural. It felt good.
Right.
And I noticed on social media a researcher down in Peru, Brian Forrester. I'm sure you've heard of him.
Mm-hmm.
And he had all of these skulls. And so with this story and with this animation, hopeful animation, and developing all these characters, I had kind of my studio just looked like an entertainment studio. So I was learning all this animation. I was learning how to create in 3D. Because I wanted my characters to walk and talk at some point. And so I was doing all of this, learning how to do it on my own. And so I had already put a face to one of these skulls that had an elongated head, and I presented that to him, and he wanted to present that to his audience globally. And when he did, boy, putting a face, right or wrong, to this skull was something that was missing. And so after that happened, it kind of launched a side trail to this story. And I got to tell you, I've been on the side trails ever since. I haven't finished the story. So the side trails were the elongated heads. And then as I moved forward with that, I discovered a lot of the southeast, the mound building complexes, and some of the alternative researchers were coming to me to reconstruct skeletal remains that might seem taller than normal, maybe 7 foot or 8 foot people. And so I have kind of become this go-to for reconstructing elongated skulls and anomalies that people don't really want to touch, let's put it that way. So and I love it. I've been doing this for about 7 years. And honestly, initially it was to help other people. It was to help alternative researchers with their information. And everybody's got their own theory. Everybody has their own, whoever's writing the narrative seems to have their own story. And that was okay. I just wanted to give them something that they could utilize with their information. So I helped a lot of people, a lot of researchers all over the world. And then I kind of, I knew I was going to be moving from Florida to the Pacific Northwest. And as I did that, it it became a little bit more internal. It became a little bit more about getting back into knowing who I'm all about, who is Marcia, and finding myself again. So then it turned into, as I reconstructed, the information became more personal. It became, it was information that was guiding me and helping me understand who I am and where I come from and what this is all about. And that made it even better. And that's where I am right now, actually, with this. I'm kind of on my own journey with this now. I will help others, but everything that I've learned from this, as you're working on something and reconstructing something and you have hands on to something, it, you know, your skills and your tools, it unfolds. And as it unfolds and presents itself, it presents information to you. And it's been a real guiding force, and specifically even over the last 2 or 3 years. And I'll have to say that my go-to is always Arla, because when I'm out hiking, I always, I'll send her a photo if I see something that is of something that I don't understand, and she'll respond, and we'll have a talk and discussion about those things. And so I am very appreciative of what she gives people.
No, thank you. I'm very thankful that you share those things with me, because it's really important. And you know, for, like you said, it opens you up, and then it begins to open me up too. And we find ourselves in a conversation that probably has a extra lot of help outside you and I within the conversation with things that are coming. So
absolutely,
yeah, it's always interesting.
Yes, it is. It surely is. It's wonderful. I love it.
So you were drawing, like you drew your first elongated skull before you even spoke to anybody about this.
Honestly, when I was a kid, I would sketch, and that's another part of me, is I carry when I was going on a lot of research type trips, I would carry a sketchbook and sketch and write down my thoughts. And now I do that every day. But when I was a kid, I did that too. And a lot of what I drew when it came to any kind of head shape was always that elongated cranium. It always felt very natural. It still does. Yeah. When I have a headache, all I have to do is kind of expand my own head. And if I expand it, it's like the pressure starts to go away. Mm-hmm. And it really helps with any kind of headache for me. So it's an expansion of consciousness, essentially.
Yeah.
And many people around the globe, almost probably on every continent, were emulating something. Civilizations were emulating something. So a lot of the elite from maybe these different tribes or civilizations were head binders. They would actually head bind the babies.
Right.
And while the skull was malleable, then that skull would take the shape of an elongated cranium. And but then you have to ask the question, well, who were they emulating, or why were they doing this? So that's always the big question. And everybody has a different answer.
Right.
Yeah. Well, you know, it stands to reason when a people or a culture does something like that, there was a reason for it. It wasn't just, oh, one day they started doing this.
Right.
There was something higher that they would have seen higher that would bring that to them. And, you know, your thoughts would go, how is this possible? You know, and for me, I go into that thought of, well, I believe that they were guided to do this for a particular reason. Now, what that reason was, you know, I don't know.
Sorry, I just had a glitch on my end, so I'm working through something right real quick. Okay, you guys keep talking for 1 second. I don't know what the heck's going on with my stuff.
Okay.
So give me 1 second.
Go ahead, Marcia.
Well, So over the last 3 years and following my own trail with this and having moved from Florida up to the Pacific Northwest, I took a look at a lot of the indigenous communities up in this region, and a lot of those communities were headbinders, and a lot of the women specifically were headbinders. So then you have to ask yourself, well, why were the women doing this? I mean, men did it as well, but it seems like it was more prevalent with the women. And you know, information comes to you as you're creating, as you're kind of repatriating or bringing back lost history. As you're sculpting, information is, maybe it's just, you know, I'm going to try to talk this away in a 3D, in a human way. But to be honest with you, it's my skills and my tools, and what comes through this is usually information that guides me. So what helped me with that, in knowing that the women did this, was that you take a look at the communities up here in the Pacific Northwest. The women were expanding their consciousness and were in tune with the universe and in tune with telepathy. Our ancient peoples were maritime sailors. They were getting around. So also people from other parts of the world were coming up and showing themselves. And, you know, who's to say that the Paracas from Peru didn't sail right up here to the Pacific Northwest? I'm sure they did. And some of our communities emulated. That's just what they copied what they saw. A lot of people did that. But for me, it goes a little deeper as far as it seems like the women were very connected this way, telepathically. And then on the other side of that, you have the men who are very rooted to the planet. So you have these women that are, it's almost the technology, the lost technology aspect of this. And then you have the men who are the spiritual aspect of this. And what does that create? It creates a balance. And if there's something that has been just said over and over and over again as I'm reconstructing these heads, is bring back the balance. Bring back the balance of technology and spirit. And when you look at some of these indigenous communities, there's also another interesting connection, in that a lot of the ceremonies, a lot of the family crests, a lot of the aesthetics, the art that's created up here is related to the wild man and the wild woman. And when you dive into those aspects of this, and you find yourself getting in tune with the Pacific Northwest that has big energy up here, and you go up into these forests and you start observing in ways that you've never observed before, and start expanding that heart space of your own in ways that you thought you never could. It is amazing what you will learn in the forest. And then when you apply the sagittal crest aspect of head binding, then you're saying, who were they emulating?
Right.
Well, when everyone's ceremonies are based on the wild man and the wild woman, who is that? So there's a lot of connection there. That's not the only connection globally, but it definitely has been I'm very in tune with that here in the Pacific Northwest.
So do you think that the head binding came about in the Pacific Northwest because of their association or meeting others who did it, or totally from the big guys that are there?
It's a combination, but the head styles are different. So a lot of the head shapes that you see in the Pacific Northwest seem to be more, they call it kind of a sugar loaf. It's a different look, and it's related more to the big guys.
Yeah.
And I'm not gonna, I'm gonna say that through me. This is my journey with this.
Right.
So I don't want to speak for others, but this is my observation with this. This is my learning with this. This is my being in tune with this. And, others might have a different narrative, a different story, but this has been my journey with this.
Hey,
Yeah.
Marcia, I think your mic might be hitting the zipper of your.
Uh-oh.
I'm not sure if that's.
I think it is. I think
Okay.
it is. Sorry about that.
Oh no, it's fine. I could hear something sometimes, and I was like, "What is that? Is it
Little
me?"
clicky clacking going on there. Okay, let me know if that happens again.
Okay. So have there been any like authentic elongated skulls found in North America, or have they mostly been found in South America and other parts of the world?
Most of the skulls that have been found in large proportions, so to speak, are down in Peru, but it is global, and there seems to be about 4% that appear to be very natural looking, that are natural. And to be honest with you, and again, I am an artist. I am not a licensed forensic sculptor. I am one that knows enough about anatomy and it had enough interest to put a face to this lost history, because I thought it was very important to do that. It's a part of, it's a huge part of, it's just something we need to know about, and we need to know more about it. So it's been a part of my journey anyway.
Yeah, I definitely agree. It's super important, and it there's a lot of commonalities with us, and it seems like in Peru especially, where they try and cover it, like the government's trying to cover it up or trying to keep it hidden, or people are trying to keep it hidden from the public, much like it seems like Sasquatch people are trying to be hidden from the public, or Star Nation people or whatever. And there's obviously a connection there, but it just the attempt. Sorry.
Excuse me. I'm sorry.
Oh no, I was going to say the attempt to just kind of like keep it hidden from everybody is. It needs to. This stuff needs to come out, and people need to talk about this stuff more. It's just really.
Well, I think it would be really to our advantage as a human species if we could finally just become relatable as far as our experiences. Let's accept that we all have different experiences. Let's accept that we all perceive differently. And let's share that and imagine what we could learn from that. I mean, that's the first step right there. I mean, we're living on this planet of duality where we just have to have this dark and light all the time. And we don't need to outprove anybody. Everybody has different experiences. There's not one person on this planet that does not perceive differently.
Right.
We're all different. We all are going to have different experiences. Can I learn from Arla? You better believe it. She's got some phenomenal experiences. And can we share each other's experiences? I'm sure that she's open to that and loves that, just like she just said. So that's kind of the first step.
Oh, yeah. It's like in the things that you and I have shared with each other from your perspective, I've grown so much in areas of my knowing that I didn't have before, and the most interesting thing is through that sharing, it brought part of something that was a part of me to me, so that I could look at this again. I did not expect that, to happen. But that's the thing, like what you're talking about with people sharing. You begin to expand when you talk to other people. If you do it with an open mind, an open heart, and, don't sit there on exactly what you believe and say, this is the only way it can be, because that's certainly not true.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah, that's actually one of the things I wanted to touch on before we started the show, was just to take, if anyone's like a doubter of this stuff, just kind of take your beliefs and just put them in your pocket for a little bit and just listen with like an open mind and an open heart, because we've all been taught one thing, but as we get older, we're starting to learn that like we're not taught anywhere near the big picture of what's really going on with the world. So, you know, it's like everything we know has been extremely whitewashed, and there's just so much more to everything than we can really understand or comprehend in one lifetime alone, much less, you know, a few years of learning it in a school. So, yeah, I just wanted to touch on that. So like, just some of this stuff might be a little bit hard for some people to like accept, but just try, because it's once you get like a little bit of that seed planted, it can sprout into something like really good. And so like that's part of the reason we wanted to do the show, is because, you know, everyone has like their own little catalyst or something that like triggers them into expanding their thoughts and maybe exploring a different avenue than they would be used to because they've never heard about it before. So like your stuff, I know that people have looked at your things before and been like, wow, you know, because when I saw your stuff at the convention in Enumclaw, I was like, it just blew me away. I was like, and the thing is, like, I had even known about Brian Forrester, and I had like listened to a couple of his lectures and seen some of his stuff, and I didn't put the two together until like recently, and I was like, oh wow, you know, and so yeah, and because I heard about all this stuff originally from like Lloyd Pye, but the way that he presented it was a little off-putting to me, because he was so like in your face about it, you know, and like, this is the fact, and you know, this is, and I'm very open to things, and I don't really like a rigid I don't like things that are like very rigid and structured. I kind of like things that are loose and open to interpretation, or you know. And so his thing opened me up to it, but I wasn't fully into it until I, you know, Brian as like a way of bringing it across. And then when I saw your stuff, I was like, wow, it just took it to a whole other level. So
Yeah, I always say I have an artistic license to do whatever the heck I want to do, and I do. I don't care, and that's
Right.
a big part of it. I don't care what anybody thinks. This is ultimately for me, and I'm sharing it with everybody else. And if it triggers something, if it helps open the door to something for someone, that's fantastic. But ultimately, at this point in this part of my life anyway, I don't care.
Right.
I care in that I'm going to do it my way, meaning that I don't have a paper. You know, a lot of people rely on these papers to say, oh, well, you're a forensic artist. That must mean you're doing it correctly. No, I've actually Googled everything that I know about forensic reconstruction.
Right.
I think that Google is kind of the Akashic Records. If you want to know something about anything, go to Google.
Right.
Oh my gosh, I love that.
But
So
that's another thing that's so cool about you, is like you're basically self-taught. Like it's not like you went to school for this.
no,
Like,
I did not.
yeah.
And what's odd about this is that nobody is, I'm going to say in North America, and if they have, I haven't seen it, but nobody has opened the door to this in a way of reconstructing it. They talk about it, but they haven't put a face to it. And I did actually have, for the first time last year, an anthropologist that came to me, and I just about fell to the floor, because I thought, here we go. Finally, someone recognizes maybe the tools and the skills that are available, and to bring a face back in a way that brings this entity back, brings the soul back, make it look like this person existed. It's not so rigid and stiff and scientific that it's just bringing back a clay face. This is bring it back. Bring this person back. Let them speak to you and learn from this. But anyway, this anthropologist came to me and was interested in having some elongated skulls reconstructed. And it was a really wonderful talk. The first talk was. And then the person disappeared. And when they came back again, they said, I can't work with you. You have helped I'm saying they said, I've taken a look at your website and you have helped people from all over the world that are not in this in an academic way. And I'm not going to risk that. And she literally just kind of, oh, I said she, so it was a girl. Couldn't do it. And I said, so you can't take the skills and the tools from somebody that could help reconstruct this again, saying that if we could all utilize our own experiences to help each other, imagine what we could learn and where we would be as a human species if we did that.
Right.
But she couldn't do it because of her own limitations with academia. And I say to academia, you only present to academia. So how are we going to learn anything? We don't learn too much from you because you only present to who you need to present to. Right. So that's where I was like, come on, we need to open the door and get this going in a way that my main goal was to just open the mind to the possibility. Keep your mind open to the possibilities. And as you do that, things start to happen and you go, wait a minute, that might be a possibility. So do your own research and figure it out. And one thing leads to another. And that's the way it works. That's the way it works, I think. So
yeah, you see that a lot too with like Egyptology and there's like so many different things or like fields of study when there's like a fraternity formed, and if anyone steps out of the little group or like thinks outside of the box, they're like ridiculed and shunned, and that drives me crazy.
I've never been to Egypt, but I can tell you right now, learning 3D sculpture, 3D technology, I can tell once again as an artist by feeling the way that you reconstruct with technology, that all of those big sculptures that you see over in Egypt, they utilize technology. Those were either scanned or 3D printed or laser. They were brought to life with technology. Those were not shipped away. There's too many of them. Oh my gosh, they would have been nonstop. And maybe they were nonstop, but a lot of the researchers that I have talked to said right on target. This is technology, old lost technology that was utilized.
Right.
And we're using it now. It's come home again. So
yeah, everything comes full circle. And, you know, just like with this anthropologist who decided that you couldn't do it because you weren't approved by the peers who pressure him to do it in a way that they have no idea if what they're doing is correct. It's just what they believe, but we can't believe anything else because we're in a club and everybody has to follow the rules of the club. And anybody who's going to step outside that, you're out of the club.
Yeah.
And that's why, even in the Bigfoot world, that's why we have names that most of us know that would not step outside that box because of their peers, not because of humanity, but because of their peers.
Right. Right. And it's like that in the UFO and ET groups too, same thing. You know, they have like their the well-known people, and then anybody that might second guess something that they say or whatever, and then they're shunned and ridiculed. It's like it doesn't help anybody to do that with any of this stuff. And you know, and I know you're like example one of what happens when you start thinking outside of the box when it comes to the Sasquatch people, you know. So, but yeah, with Marcia's stuff, I mean, I guess when you started doing Ancient Aliens, that kind of opened up a little bit to the possibility. I'm hoping that people might start paying more attention to it.
Well, yeah, it seems like every once in a while this little door opens, and Ancient Aliens was just a way to meet to get out information. There again, it's everyone's going to perceive it differently, and
Right.
and the idea is to keep your mind open to the possibilities. It's not like it's written in stone, the ideas that they present. So I participated twice on Ancient Aliens for that reason. I'm like, get it out there, get some information out there. This is a great platform to get it out there, so get it
Mhm.
out there. And just recently, Gaia has come to me and asked for some reconstructions that they're going to use on one of their episodes. And so, it's always out there. It's just not out there.
Right.
It's out there. You just have to find it out
Yeah.
there.
Right.
And I've kept myself I learned this early on because a lot of people gave me a hard time about this early on, probably not like Arla's hard time, but they gave me a hard time. And I said, you know what? Become invisible. You can make yourself invisible and be visible with the work. And that's the way it has worked for me. I am one of the most visible persons you'll ever meet because the work is everywhere, but nobody seems to know who does it. So it is out there everywhere. I've seen it everywhere too. And people will present it to me. They'll say, did you see your work? It's over in Russia on the television station over there. So it's out there all over the place. And that used to kind of bother me, but now it doesn't. I'm like, just show it. Just do it.
Yeah.
Just keep the door
Yeah.
open. So
Yep,
Yeah.
it has to be out there for those people whose mind is open, but
yes.
also it's that seed planting thing again. When you put something out there, you never know when you'll plant a seed that the person is never even aware that has happened, but somewhere along the way, something gets triggered in that person and they go, oh, wait a minute.
Yeah.
Now I see something that I didn't see before.
Yeah.
So
that, and I think, like with being with the big guys, it's like that you feel like you have a safe space to talk about things and people won't poo-poo you. They'll actually, listen to your experience and share their experiences. I just think that's so important that we do that and that we get off this ridiculous.
Well, I've been poo-pooed a lot. It's not like it's anything new to me, and that's okay too. Whatever happens, I've planted seeds, and if they grow, they grow, and if they don't, they don't. That's not something I try to be overly concerned with. And like you're doing what it is that connects you to that deeper part of yourself, which is actually that part of the creator, that anytime we create something, we are directly connected to that creator of the universe, so where else are you going to get better information?
Yep, absolutely. Yep. And it's an everyday wonderful experience.
It
it's my
is.
world every moment, every single moment, even now as we speak, it's that connection. And that's that's a wonderful, wonderful feeling. It really is.
Sorry, I keep hearing the door. I think my son's trying to peek in the room. So the elongated skulls that you've worked with, what are some of the characteristics of the skulls that make them totally so that they can't be the difference between genuine elongated skulls and something that was cradle boarded?
Well, something that's cradle boarded just has an elongated cranium, but looks just like a human sapien skull. So
Right.
It looks like a human skull. maybe the eye sockets actually get lengthened a little bit because you're pulling up. And sometimes that does happen. That's why it makes it so hard to sometimes determine the differences. But the ones that have the most anomalies are the ones that you cannot tell if this is male. You can, and believe me, I worked in dental, so I know a lot about teeth. I can never, it's very hard for me to determine if they're male, if they're female, if the jaw, I mean, the teeth can look like it's from a female, but the jaw can look like it's from a male, but yet it throws you off completely. So there are definitely some big change. There's a lot of difference actually.
Yeah.
And the eye sockets, you know, I'm going to say they are bigger, but a lot of the distortion comes from our digital cameras. So because, and I have, you know, I've have hands-on to this, so I know. I see them in front of me and I'm like, well, they're bigger. But then when I take a photo of them, boy, they just like double in size. And I'm like, people need to really understand that the eyes are bigger, but they're not. I get criticized all the time. You need to make your eyes bigger. And I'm like, well, they're not bigger. They're a little bit bigger, but they're not as big as they think they are. They're not like these huge sockets that are just like.
Well, do you think that's people's perception that because the skull is bigger, the features also have to be bigger instead of the skull being elongated? It doesn't need eyes up into the skull. It would be like our faces with that elongated skull on. You know, that would be the natural ratio of skull to eyes. And I guess people maybe think, well, because that skull, the ratio is off if the skull's too big, trying to put it back into what we see as a skull.
I think most people want to go out into the cosmos with this, like now. They want to go out there with this. And I have slowly opened this door. And so I think that, and I have had most of the reconstructions that I have done are head binders. And I said to myself, you have to reconstruct what you know before you can start heading way out somewhere. And, but I am at some point going to reconstruct a skull that I've already reconstructed, and I'm going to head it out there. And I'm going to see what unfolds through that. Because the first time around, I had to follow an anthropology report. Sometimes these anthropology reports, I look at them and I'm like, I don't, okay. They're very strange, and it's hard to make decisions on. They're just so. They're very different, and you have to have one in front of you to understand it. You really do. You have to see it. You have to see the teeth. You have to see the jaws. You have to see the.
Okay, so you're talking about a recreation of a skull that's natural. Is that what you're talking about now?
Well, actually, the one that I'm going to reconstruct, that I've already reconstructed, had an anthropology report that said it was natural, but it's from Paracas, Peru, and I don't think this is natural. And I mean, I do think it's natural. I'm sorry. Oh gosh, did I just throw you guys off?
No, I understood what you're saying. I understood what you're saying in a weird.
I just threw myself off. That's what I'm like.
Right.
Yeah, this is one that I reconstructed that they said was head binding, but it really, from the get-go, felt to me like it was not. And I'm going to go for what I really wanted to reconstruct with this, opposed to what I had to do when I did this. So
yeah.
Did that make sense?
Well, it's the information you're being given.
Yes.
And you have to be true to that information. I mean, you're like the anthropologist who wouldn't let you do it because they didn't like that information that was going to come out. And that's more than likely, you know, don't push any buttons about something that we don't see. And so if they try to make all of these at a product of head binding, then for us, I can't say for them, but for us, that seems like a disservice
Absolutely.
to the elongated skulls.
Yep.
Yeah.
So the next one that you see come from me will be one that's going to go the distance in a different direction here. So
That's awesome. Hurry.
Yeah, no, I'm very, very excited to see that. So they don't have like the suture, right? Like how our human skulls have like a suture on the front, or like there's
Yeah,
they don't have that, right?
they're missing one of the sutures. Yes.
Right.
Yeah. Where we have the 3 sutures, there's only 2 on the elongated skull. And then they have these interesting little nerve endings in the back that show up as little holes that we don't have as well. And there's also the foramen magnum, which is where the neck and the skull connect.
Right.
It sits back, way back on the skull. And for me, and I've shown people this work that I've done before, but I think I'll start showing it again because a lot of people haven't seen this. But for me, if the skull and the neck sits way back and the skull has this S-curve balance, we're talking a whole different look here. We're talking an S-curve that form follows function, like they say in architecture. So
Right.
How would they have walked? How would they have carried themselves if they have to balance this head, and if they have a neck that it sits way in the back, and the neck would be longer? So there's a whole other look going on here,
Right.
which I'm dying to reconstruct, to be honest with you.
Well, these elongated skulls, since that is different and they have less on their skull than we do, did the head binding cause that, or how did that happen when you've got a skull that doesn't have as many as what our skulls have?
The sutures?
Yes.
Human skulls have the 3 sutures.
Right.
And unless the skull is just so old that it's fused and you just can't see it unless you see it through an x-ray of some sort, which sometimes happens.
But do the elongated skulls have exactly like our skull, or do they have left of the sutures than
they
we
have
do?
less than?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's what I'm trying to figure out. How does that happen from head binding?
Right.
That's what I was trying to figure out. Wait a minute. Now, if they're human as we're human, then regardless of what shape you put your head into, you should, in my thinking, retain the same amount of sutures in the skull.
Yeah, you do. So head binders, you'd see the 3 sutures. And the ones where, that I got an anthropology report specifically, you only saw 2. And I said, okay, well, I'll treat this as a head binder, but I don't think this is a head binding. So
Right. But did they have any reasoning for that being like that, having less sutures than what we do?
Reason behind, I don't know. I mean, I haven't even thought about that. A less than suture.
Yeah. I just wonder how they explained it, or even if they addressed it and just omitted that in the paper that you got, the anthropology.
Well, the anthropology paper was that they looked under kind of x-ray, and they said they could see the line, but you can't see it. And this skull is supposedly like a 14, 16, 18-year-old. So I don't think it would have disappeared.
I wouldn't think so,
So the naturally elongated skulls are more of like an androgynous appearance?
Very much
seems like.
so. That's what I'm getting from it. Yeah.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
so cool.
And even when I reconstruct, people are always saying, "Oh, she's so pretty," and or someone will go, "Oh, he's so nice looking," and I'm like, and I just let people. The comments I never say. I'll just go, "Well, even they don't know," but they're saying. I
Yeah.
mean, I'm reconstructing that way too, so
Right.
people
Yeah.
can't really determine.
Yeah, we get real caught up on that, he and she.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Right.
yeah, we do.
The DNA that's been run on them, I think it was Brian. He said that it comes back from like northern and eastern Europe and Eurasia area, but yet they're found in Peru. So
Yeah. Well, once again, it doesn't. Maritime sailors.
right,
Everyone got around,
right.
and
And
more
they
so
have
than we do now, actually.
right. It seems like it. And they had like a reddish auburn hair, and which is not natural to that area at the time or
Yeah.
since then, really.
Yeah, and you find that in different, just even on the kind of the trail I'm on. I mean, think about, being up here in the Pacific Northwest, and let's just take this in a different way, and let's kind of connect our big guys with this. Well, there's a lot of red going on in there too, so there's a lot of redheads.
Yeah, and the mound builder culture, right? Amongst the mound builders, there's a lot of red hairs.
Yeah, you
And
don't hear too much about that either.
Lovelock Cave,
Yeah.
Story.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's the thing, there's so much out there that we just don't know. And to think that we know it all is just absurd at this point.
I think there's only about 99% of history is just gone.
Right.
So those telling us about history, I mean, you have to either believe the research that they're, the narrative that they're coming up with, or you don't. So they're the ones telling the story. A lot of the stories I'm like, I don't think so. Again, this has to go along with your own perception, but your own intuition. This stuff speaks to me, just like I'm sure it speaks with our life. I know it does. So it's like, you just know. You're like, no. No.
Yeah.
Well, I've talked to a lot of Indigenous people who have things come back to them that are lost to their culture. And the question is, well, how did you get that information? That information was lost. Well, no, that information is still out there, but you have to have someone who can connect with it and, bring it forward to us now. And I know I've worked with some Indigenous people who had become associated with the big guys, and they were like, they are giving me information that belongs with my culture. And when I talk to some of the elders, they know parts of it, but they don't know all of it. But you'll have one who, through the years, kept part of that information. You have another one who has kept part of the information. And so once this dialogue starts that the big guys brought, then you've got these Indigenous people talking to each other and going, whoa, wait a minute. I have this. This is what I was given to keep, and this is what I was given to keep. And so you start putting these things together, and no, it wasn't written down. It wasn't kept by everybody, but people were given pieces of the puzzle until someone came to help them begin to put the puzzle together. And I think that's a lot of what is going on now. We've got a whole lot of puzzle pieces that are coming together that are making this so much more clear for a lot of us, and especially with this mound builder stuff, I just get really excited when I start thinking about that and what's going on now. And with you bringing this part that you're bringing to everybody is really cool.
Yeah, I would agree. It's a very exciting, it's a phenomenal time to be human on this planet. So much is opening up to us right now and coming home. It's just wonderful. It really is.
Yeah, it really is. It's cool.
Yeah.
Because yeah. Let's dive into the mound builders a little bit. If you is that something you've been interested in also, or did it kind of come to you while you were doing other stuff?
Well, yeah, the Elongated Heads was kind of one of the trails, and then the Mound Builders was a trail, and then now out here in the Pacific Northwest, I've got these big guys. But you know what? The big guys have been around me since I was a little girl too. There was so much that I didn't recognize until I had to revisit myself, I guess.
Yep. Sounds very familiar.
So lost a lot of that through just conditioning and following a trail that made no sense, obviously. And now trying to be as authentic as I can to my own person and my own skill set, what I have to share with people, and it just feels so much better. So it's a great feeling anyway. But yeah, we can talk a little bit about the Mound Builders. I'm no research expert by any means, but I have reconstructed some of the material.
Yeah. And are you so have you been, is that just something that you wanted to do for fun, or have people like asked you to do it?
Both.
Both.
Yeah. People have asked me to do it, and I've done it specifically. I was given from a mound in Virginia actual skull data and skeleton data from one of the mounds, and I reconstructed an Adena, male and female. But again, this is my interpretation.
Right.
But you know what? It has never been done, so at least it's a starting point. It's like it's at least a visual that can help people move along to the next thing.
Yeah.
So it helped me.
Oh, yeah. And do you because my introduction to, again, like growing up in Virginia and living in Georgia for a long time, I lived in Tennessee for a while, but just traveling throughout that whole area growing up, we would see mounds all the time, but we're just never taught about it, and it just doesn't and then so now when I look back, I'm like, oh yeah, like they were all over the place, but we just didn't know anything about them. And then I heard Jim Vieira speak about like what he was finding, and I was like just blown away by just all this stuff. So when I saw your artwork and your recreations of what you're seeing, it's just so awesome, to me. And then listening to people like researchers or people that like really get into this stuff and present it to people, I love it so much, and I just want other people to be introduced to it like I was introduced to it, because it just opened up like a whole other avenue for me of learning about the truth of what's really going on, or seeing like some of the truth of what's really going on that we're not taught in academia.
Yeah, the mound building complexes. What can you say about that? When you go up to Cahokia, and if you've ever experienced Cahokia, or you live down by the spiral mounds. Cahokia was like, it's always mentioned as the first melting pot, it's a civilization of 30 to 40,000 people. We don't know about that.
Right.
That's huge. We don't know. There's nothing that can tell us a little bit about, is there any oral tradition? Is there any stories? Is there anything written down? Is there anything that talks about Cahokia? I think there's a lot of conjecture with Cahokia. There's a lot of just coming up with your own narrative with that, because I think if I were to guess, and with what I have been reconstructing, you didn't just have normal sized people walking around. You had people with elongated craniums walking around. You had people that were 7 foot and 8 foot walking around. You had all kinds of, if it's a melting pot, you had a melting pot going on there, and we're never shown that. So we're shown that the relationship with North America and Native Americans, and there is, of course, that relationship, but it goes so much deeper than that too. And I don't know if that's just completely lost. It could be.
I don't think it is.
Yeah.
I think it's coming out.
Yeah.
Just from some that I talked to, I think more so it's coming out, and this totally spiritual aspect of the Mounds people too, past this human thoughts that we have. I know at the Spiro Mounds, I have been there. They have held winter solstice things where you walk there up until midnight. And, it's like this place, and some of these people who are in charge of this are expanding people's minds, because there's no way you can walk around that area at that particular time and look up at the sky on a winter's night where you're freezing to death and you're still there, and that sky just is so bright and so opened up. You just have to know that there's more going on here than what a lot of people are saying. So you've got that, and you've got hundreds of people who have come to do this, and they're talking amongst themselves of things that are going on, and looking at the stars and talking about Star Nation beings, and all of this. So yeah, there are people out there who are bringing things. I mean, Jim Vieira brought so much out to this, and then there are going to be others too, I believe, that are going to understand some things and bring them out. Whether people are going to understand it or not, that's another story, but there we go, planting seeds again. So
yeah, absolutely. I think those little puzzle pieces that you're talking about are coming together. Everybody's got a little puzzle piece, and they're, oh, here's mine. And
yeah, I think so too. And that really excites me, because I love puzzles and putting everything together. It's just, I think that's just really cool.
Yeah. And the Mounds are, everyone that have ever talked to is mesmerized by the Mounds when they go to a site.
Yeah.
And they're just like, there's something about these Mounds. And it's true. There's just something about these Mounds. And this was such a huge part of lost North American history.
Mm-hmm.
And it was right here, and we just don't discuss this too much. And it's time to talk about it. It really is.
Oh yeah, I think so. And there's so much around. Let's see, what is it? Intaglio? How do you say that? Intaglio, mm-hmm. Which is also things there. I have been to some in Kansas that a lot of people have no idea that they're there. The landowners know, but the landowners don't talk about it, because they don't want everybody coming in there. But if you know somebody that knows, you get to go see those things. And I remember the first one that I got to see, it was like, there's still all of this energy that's still here from those who created this. The same as any artist creates something and puts their energy into it. If you're open to feel that energy, then you get to touch who created that, who made that. And I think that's one of the things that's changing a lot of people is you've got these people who are opening up to that energetic thought. And so now they're able to feel a lot of that.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Yep.
Yeah, there's a when I still lived in Georgia, my parents live in Alabama, and so there's when we would leave my parents' house driving back, there's this one road that we would cut through, and it was probably about 20-minute drive. And driving through that, we drove through this private property farm, and there was a mound on this person's property, like not far off the road, and it's so obviously a mound. I mean, it's like the shape of it, and then there's another one next to it that's pretty much a pyramid, but it's completely covered in grass, and it look, like to a normal person, it would just look like a hill or something. But like to me, I would just always look over to it, and it does draw me to it. Like every time I drive by it, it'd be like, even if I would not be aware we were coming up to it, it would just be like, as soon as we get there, it'd be like, and I would just stare at it, But that whole area, all the Southeast, I mean, there's so much that's like hidden from us, and yeah, it does need to be talked about more.
You can just imagine how the amount of people that lived at that time, and all of the Gulf was just sitting there for maritime sailing, and how everyone just made it up to the coast, went up to Florida, and went up on in there, and all of the trade that went from from the north, from every direction, people came and they traded, and you do see that in a lot of the collections. You see trade goods that are just from everywhere. When you look at the sculptures that are from like Cahokia, you're like, I'm a visual person, so when I look at these sculptures, I'm like, that's Mesoamerica. I mean, that's the relationship there is very, very strong. So, and that's an obvious. And of course, even when you look at the time periods, you're like, well, it was about time for the Mayans to get completed, and then that started the trail up to Cahokia, and you've got a little bit of everybody
Right.
up here in North America, a little bit of everybody. I mean, it's definitely, I always say, kind of the Lord of the Rings, because you've got a little bit of every species imaginable all over this planet. So it must have been a sight to see for sure.
Yeah, and yet we're taught that it was only one culture until 1492 or whatever it was. It was only one, it was only Native Americans.
Yeah.
And they didn't even come from here. They came over the Bering Straits.
Right.
They weren't even Native Americans. So, yeah. And I really like that has been being tested, so much. And as science catches up with the truth of how things are, we do get to see that, maybe that's not exactly right. Maybe some did come that way, but there were hardy people here. So I can go to stories of that I've heard elders talk about here in southeastern part of the United States about there's one story about an underground passageway from what would be the United States in the Southeast into Central America and through that area, that they had a short underground passageway where they connected with them. And if you look at icons from Central America and throughout that area, and you look at some of the icons of the Southeastern Indians, you've got the feathered serpent. Okay, Cherokee people have a Uktana, which is this winged serpent with all of these colored crystals down his back. And you've got Sindolo, who for Choctaw people, who is very much this giant holy snake serpent. So why would these people have things so similar and be separated by this body of water and couldn't get there? Well, they could have taken boats, of course. But I believe that there were other ways that they utilized that traveling back and forth.
Yeah, and when you look at Cahokia, that's built on like the lowest below sea level area that you can get, like in the Midwest. I mean, that's a muddy mess over there most of the time. So they're building around water, and you've got the serpents that you're talking about, and the water, and you've got that relationship going on.
Right.
And many people, our indigenous communities will say, memory is in the water. So
That's
all
right.
of that relationship is going on, and it must have been quite an impressive community.
Yeah.
Big community.
Oh yeah, it has to be. And so much of the stuff at Spiro Mounds is not there. That it was looted extensively.
Yeah.
But they have recreations and different things, and then some other stuff there. But just looking at those, you go, oh my gosh, it just each thing tells a story, and you put all those stories together, and then maybe you can understand just how awesome that culture was.
Yeah, absolutely. Over in Florida, you had a lot of pseudo archaeologists coming in just with their bulldozers and just flattening these things out. And but there are some old photos that even show that there were elongated craniums over in Crystal River in Florida. That was considered a real hub for people to there were a lot of burial mounds there, and I think there were probably a lot of burial mounds all over with these mound cultures, but there seemed to be, that was one of the specific reasons why people would go to Crystal River, was to actually have ceremony and bring their dead and have ceremony for the dead. And to this day, I think there is even Inuit that go down to Crystal River every year to do ceremony. That's how far people were coming. Everybody was getting around, that's for sure. A lot going on.
Yeah, because the Paracas people, I guess there's a theory that they actually might have come like even across to, or they had something to do with the oh man, it slipped my mind. What's the island in the Pacific that has the big head?
Eastern Island. The Eastern Island.
Is that what Eastern Island? That they had something to do with that too. I'm not sure, but that's like a theory that they maybe came across the Pacific or had something to do. Easter Island. Yeah, that's what
Easter
it is.
Island.
Easter Island. But they had something to do with that too, maybe before they even came to South America or the Peruvian coast.
Yeah. Anything's possible. They were definitely making the rounds, that's for sure. And if they're coming from the Caucasus area of, up into the Eastern Eurasia and coming down and coming around, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, and if they did, it makes you wonder if they did what a lot of people did, where they kind of just cruised along the coast and came across the Bering Strait and then down the west coast of Americas, or if they just shot across the Pacific Ocean.
I think that the navigation skills were phenomenal.
Yeah.
And even the people up here in the Pacific Northwest will talk about how they could make canoes that could hold 100 people and sail to Hawaii and to New Zealand and around and back. I mean, these guys, they knew how to guide themselves and get around. So
yeah. And then they were exterminated, the Paracas people, pretty much, weren't they, by the Nazcas?
Well, the Nazca came in and really kind of did a number on them. I think the Paracas were kind of it's my understanding, and it's even my, in reconstructing them, were a very gentle people, very, just a good people. And just, when you're someone came in and took over.
Yeah.
So, and then emulated what they saw, because the Nazca ended
Right.
up emulating all of the Paracas with the elongated heads.
Right. Yeah. Funny how that happens, right?
Yeah.
Because that's, yeah, like you touched on this earlier. I mean, it's happened all over the world. Like Egyptians have stories of having elongated heads, like Osiris and Tutankhamun,
Mhm.
and then Attila the Hun, I believe, is supposedly has an elongated head. I don't know if it was shaped or if it has something to do with that either. But I mean, the Huns are from that area.
Yeah, and you see a lot of the relationship, at least I'm feeling a lot of the relationship as I take the trail up here in the Pacific Northwest. And then if I were to hop over to Eastern Eurasia, the big guy relationship with the oral tradition, and all you have to do is look at regalia and you're
Mhm.
like, okay, that's telling me everything right there. So there's interesting things go on with these elongated heads. It's
Yeah.
not just one idea. There's a lot of different things that were being emulated.
Yeah. All right. So the Star Child skull. I'd like to. That's another thing I learned about that from Lloyd Pye too, and I was a little bit skeptical about that at first, but the more I started to learn about it, I was like, wow, that's pretty rad. And then when I saw your rendition of it, I was like, that's so cool. But what are some of the features of the Star Child skull that distinguish it from like a normal human skull?
I don't know. My reconstruction might be just cool.
I think
I
it's
don't
awesome.
know.
Yeah, I think it's awesome.
To be honest with you, I don't know much about Lloyd Pye's Star Child, but the one that I was going from was one that Brian Forrester had found down in Peru.
Okay.
That was very, very similar.
Very similar, yeah.
And I had, I mean, to me, it just seemed very, I mean, there's an insect looking, it's very paper thin, the actual skull, and it just has a real insectoid looking visual for me. I mean, that's what
Yeah.
came across for me. So,
But it didn't have it didn't have anything that looked like were teeth where it
no,
could have
because
had
all of
teeth.
that was missing. So that was all an interpretation.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
all of that was missing. And I think even in Lloyd's, I believe that was missing too. And that again, when that all of that's missing, it's like on an insect, this is a very delicate area here, and that whole jaw or whatever it was just fell apart. So it
Oh,
was
okay.
all cooked up.
Yeah. Because I heard that or from what they were speculating was that it didn't look like it had a place where the lower jaw even connected to the upper
Right.
to the
Yeah.
skull.
Yeah. So that's very anomalous for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And there was only a few of those, right? 2 or 3 of those
I
found?
think there's only been 3 that have been found.
Okay.
And Brian has one, and then Lloyd Pye had one, and I'm not sure where the other one is, but
And they
maybe
were
more-
found in the general area, weren't they? Was that
Yeah.
what in?
I
Okay.
think, well, I just know where Brian's was located. I don't know much about Lloyd Pye's
Oh, okay.
skull, if his was found in South America. There's a lot that has been found in South America, but they have more of an open, they keep their minds open, and when they discover something, they investigate it and really, really research it. So
Yeah.
a little different philosophy going on.
It's good.
North America, we hide quite a bit. So
Yeah. Yeah, that's our job to uncover it.
I guess,
Well, they're not going to do it, so we got to do it.
yeah.
So you've been living in Washington for a few years now, a couple of years,
3 years.
and you've been. Have you made a connection with the forest people more so? Like,
I have made more of a connection on a density level than I have on a 3D human density level.
right?
I have had moments of that, but it's been more through density, energy,
Mhm.
and visuals that I receive, and gifts that I receive.
Mhm.
and just a knowing. I mean, it's an obvious knowing.
Right.
There's an expansion that happens when you're catching up with the frequency from a 3D experience, at least what I've can understand. There's an emotional experience that you just don't have too much of as a human. It isn't a real huge heart expansion. It really is. It's an unbelievable feeling. And, people can say what they want about that. But then when there's gifts that come along with that, what can you say? I mean, I could tell you all kinds of stories about stuff like that. So
Please do.
I'll give you one instance of what something happened. I was on the trail hiking one day, and I had kind of a little bit of an epiphany. For me, it was an epiphany. For someone else, it might be, well, I discovered that a long time ago, but I hadn't. So as I was walking the trail, I had this epiphany, and I was like, wait a minute, because everyone always talks about how, you only have one print sometimes you only see one footprint. And I'm like, okay, well, maybe as we're raising our frequency, it really occurred to me that I was entering that density. And that's why I could see and feel and receive in a way that I couldn't in my 3D form or my 4D form.
Mm-hmm.
And that really was an epiphany for me that day. And I said to myself, if I only had a little sketchbook, I didn't say little, I said, if I only had a sketchbook to write this down, because I don't know if I'm going to remember this, I just need something to write this down in. And within less than 100 feet, there was a big, quite a large stick that had been thrusted into the ground. And there was a little red notebook that was hanging off of it. I'm going to show you the picture.
Yeah, that's so cool.
And of course, my little humanness said, somebody lost that little notebook, and somebody else came along and put it up on this stick, and then
somebody did.
and then about a minute later, I said, no, you just asked for a sketchbook. And when I took that little sketchbook, it didn't have anything written in it. This was an empty little sketchbook. It was, that was pretty amazing to me. And of course, that was, come on.
Yeah, that's so cool.
Yeah, here it is right here. Can you see that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah. So, and that just happens all the time.
That's like one of those in your face things. It's like, okay, here it is in your face. Now what are you going to do?
Right.
Well, I'm going to try to figure out.
I'm going to poo-poo away this. I'm going to poo-poo away this little message.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I've had many of those messages. Absolutely. Yeah. And I've even had ones related to the elongated heads, because I was presented a pine cone. And the pine cone, of course, is the symbol of the pineal gland and that expansion. And so I was like, wow. So, and that happens all the time. Have I sat and had a face-to-face conversation? No, I have not, but I don't need to, because these are experiences that are phenomenal, and they're for me. It's like I'm finding out who I am again, and it's amazing. It's absolutely amazing.
Yeah, that's exactly how I feel about it too. It's awesome.
Yeah, and this goes with the little guys too. There's all kinds of stuff happening there too all the time. It's like, good grief. They will literally, as I'm walking the trail, present, as an artist, they present their own canvas. They'll present their own canvas, and they'll have little sprinkles of this and a little sprinkle of that, and they'll form it in such a way, and you're like, you have got to be kidding me. And I'm always on the trail saying, this is gorgeous. This is gorgeous artwork. And why wouldn't you create a canvas on a hiking trail that's bare. I
Mhm.
mean, that's a perfect canvas right there. So
Yeah.
there's all kinds of wonderful things. And
It is.
so many,
It's amazing
It is
once you get
amazing.
into that, the connection that you feel with them that expands that connection to everything and to the universe.
it's wonderful.
Mm-hmm.
It really is. And again, you know, these are experiences, and it's fun to share experiences, and that's what people should
Mhm.
be doing. Share your experiences and have fun with them, and
Yeah.
Yeah, without being ridiculed or made fun
without
of.
being ridiculed. If
Yeah.
you know, it's such a fine line when we talk veils, or we talk energy, or we talk density. It's such a fine line. Don't think that, I mean, this is heavy stuff. There's all kinds of stuff going on out there.
Yeah.
Mhm.
All kinds of stuff.
Yep.
Another, I was out sketching in the woods one day. This is a perfect example. I was out sketching in the woods one day. I'm sitting on a fallen cedar, and I'm not too far away from the trail. I mean, probably about 40 feet away from the trail. And about 20 people walked by me hiking. And I'm sketching, very visible, and only one person saw me.
Mhm.
And I said, if I'm going unseen, think of what else is going unseen.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's simple stuff. Like I have friends here who have been helping to work on the place, and Bill and Lori and Jonathan and I, we went out for a hike. They wanted to see some places and on the land, and I wanted to take them down to another place. Well, Lori has said, I'd love to see one, or it would just be so awesome. And so she had told me a story about a golf ball. And we were kind of laughing about this golf ball story. And then we go out hiking. Well, we're in the woods, lots of trees and stuff. And we're just weaving here, there, and everywhere. Well, what's right there on the path? A golf ball. And she's like, oh, it's a golf ball. Yeah, and we were just, talking about that golf ball story. Well, Lori, knowing her, she's feeling like, well, I got something, but Bill didn't get anything, because I know her and I know how she thinks along that line. Well, we turn a different way to come back up that we wasn't going to do. And what do we find? They find another golf ball. So both of them have a golf ball. Now, why would there be golf balls down in that area anyway?
Right.
And there was no way you could hit a golf ball off down in there. You would never do it. And there wouldn't be anybody here to do it either. And she said after that, she was like, no, I haven't seen them. But, she had an experience. They both had this experience that you can talk it away if you want to, but the odds of a golf ball being down there right after we had talked about the golf ball story, and then for her to think in that manner, and then, well, Bill gets his golf ball too. So yeah, it's those are special things. Those are past the seeing one or hearing a whoop or a knock or a whatever. Those are personal experiences that they knew what was going on with you. And that's, one of the things they know.
Oh,
they know what's going on with you.
Absolutely.
Oh, yeah.
Absolutely. Sweetgrass is one of those things too. It's like, I love sweetgrass. Boy, I just love the smell of sweetgrass, and I'll get out in that forest, and every once in a while, that whiff of sweetgrass will just come on by.
Right.
Yeah.
It's wonderful.
Yeah, it is. And I think most people expect encounters to be, loud and rambunctious and just, giant man running at you or breaking trees or whatever. But like, there's the things that they do sometimes are just so subtle
Yeah.
that it took me a while to recognize it, because I was still expecting, and I got those loud experiences too. So I just thought they'd always be like that. But yeah, you get the subtle ones, or the ones that just really connect with you. Like I would get a glyph right on the driveway underneath my car door when I would, go to my car in the morning, and I'd be like, wow, look at that. Yeah.
There again, it's perception. So I think on many levels, you're going to get what you perceive.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, you are. What you put out is what you're going to get back. That's like with the hearts, heart rocks, heart shapes, heart everything. And we were talking about that today. And it's like, if that's where your focus lies, with that heart and with that caring, and the universe is going to honor you by giving that back to you, validating what you put out is coming back to you. And, I really like that kind of validation.
Yeah, I do too. Absolutely.
Yeah.
And I think more and more people are starting to get in tune with that.
Yeah.
Totally agree.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
And that opens them up to pretty much everything we've talked about tonight.
Yeah.
It's an easy way. Everybody knows what the symbol of the heart is. Once that heart starts to open up and expand, oh my gosh, that's that RSVP from the universe to start bringing in information and challenging you to find answers to all these questions that are coming.
Yeah. That's a great way to put that. Yeah.
Yeah, without a doubt. That's as paradigm shattering as anything, as far as I'm concerned. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, because going back to what you were saying about you sitting still and people just walking right by you and not seeing you, like, how many people go and just spend time sitting still in the woods? Tom touches on this a lot, and it's something that I was real stubborn on learning this myself. Is like, if you want to connect with the Sasquatch people, just go into the woods and sit, and I was always being like, well, I'm going to go find it myself, and I'd go in the woods and hike around all day. And then, like, the one time when I made the two of the most influential impressions that was made on me by them were two times where I was sitting still, and I stayed in an area for a while and just centered myself, and it happened. And most of the times when I was like walking around looking for stuff, like, I don't know, I guess my mind was just somewhere else, but it just doesn't work. So yeah.
Well, I sketch every day, and I figure, hey, that's something that can be enjoyed. So when you're out in the woods and sketching, let everybody enjoy it. So that's
Oh yeah, I really do. I really get to enjoy getting to be in the woods with you, even though I'm not there physically. I am there physically, but that's a joy to me because I get to enjoy that part. And I think people they're looking for that connection, and if you can give that to them or put it out there where they can make that connection, that just truly helps a lot.
Yeah. I think they're looking for that. People are looking for a validation, but they're also looking for a safe space. And I know Arla really helps that. She helps that along and gives that to people. So that's really super important.
Yeah. Yep. So you, Marcia, when you say you not, I guess channel's not really a word for it, but I guess that's the only word I can really think of. But when you're doing this art and stuff, you feel like you're channeling something from somewhere.
Well, that's what artists do.
Yeah, like so but you can like, yeah. So
It's never me.
right,
The only thing that's me, I've got some tools and I've got some skills because I've been doing it for so long, but the rest of it comes from, it just unfolds.
right,
And I can look at my work a year later and read something that I've written and just go, wow, where did this come from? I mean,
yeah,
I'm
Yes.
just as much surprised as
Yeah.
you guys are, to be honest
Yeah.
with you. I never, when I begin, let's just say when I begin a reconstruction, I'm like, how are you going to make this work? I mean, it's overwhelming to look at something like that and go, okay, how are we going to do this? Because there's certain things that you do have to follow. But then when you start making it, and it just, it's like your hands are just being led pretty much. So
yeah,
it comes out. And I think that even forensic artists would have to say that there's a little bit of magic there. They'd probably say, well, you can call it magic, but it is that energy that's coming through you.
Mhm.
You are the one that is doing that.
yeah,
Just with your skills and your tools.
right,
And all artists do that. All forms of creativity is that.
yeah,
Everything in life is that. So if you can start to recognize that, it can really really help you with who you are. I mean, that's the
100%.
first question that came out of my mouth when I, as I was like this high, with my dad, I was like, who are we? So, and I got the Midwestern answer. Well, you're an American. And and I said, gosh, it's got to go deeper than that. And then he gave me the timeline of how things worked, and I went, that can't be right.
Uh,
I said, I can't do this.
Yeah,
And I didn't do it very well. So it's just good to follow your heart, be your authentic self, do what you love to do, follow your passions. And from that,
yep.
that's life right there.
yeah. But I think that's one of the things I really appreciate about you is that you're very humble about it. You don't come across as someone who's like, look at me, I'm the best. You're very, you admit that this is coming through you. You're just
Well, I'm not going to lie, and that's why
Yeah.
that's why I say I've got artistic license to say anything and do anything I want,
right. And
because I don't care
Yeah.
what anybody else thinks. I really don't.
yeah, and I like that because I've thought about this for a while. Like I think a lot of our most intelligent people in the world and the most like professors from MIT or like these people like Einstein or whoever throughout history who have just been like super intellectual or whatnot are channeling things, but some of them are either too proud to admit that it's not them, that it's like coming through them rather than it's just from them. And so I see these things where like these mathematicians, and I can't help but think that this stuff is coming through them, but they're just taking all the credit for it themselves. Does that make any sense?
Yeah, it does. But we all have a little bit of ego. I mean, that's how we
Oh,
keep going.
totally.
So, I have to be pushed too. I can say this, but at the same time, I'm like, I've got to push myself to the next level.
Mhm.
And, but at this stage in my life, I'm doing this to, number one, for myself and others that want to see it. And that's it. There's no big paycheck that's coming through this. There's none of that. And that's a lot of times, the way that I present myself in the professional manner that I present myself, people I think do think that that's what's happening, and it's not. So it's just the tools and skills that I have, and I'm using them to the best ability that I can. That's it. Period. The end.
Right. But that also keeps you authentic because you're not doing it for a paycheck, like you said. So, if someone, you're not being forced to do it a certain way. You're still doing it your
No,
own
and
way.
there's always it was probably a blessing that I didn't get to work with that anthropologist, because then there again, I would have had to conform to, an anthropology report, which is okay. But then I would have had to have gone, every step would have been, dictated by somebody else. And that's not how it works. Creativity does not work like that. It unfolds. It's not rigid. So you're going to get the worst effect possible if you make something sterile, just rigid. It doesn't work like that. You have to let a creative person do what they do. There's no thinking involved. In fact, the less thinking is better.
Yeah, because I mean the anthropologists, that's what happens to them. They get stifled and molded into fitting in this certain way, and they're not allowed to be authentic in a way. Or even if they wanted to, I mean, not all of them. There's been a few that have been able to step out, but it goes back to the ridiculing thing, or that like the group. You got to be part of the group. You can't step outside. Let's all agree on this. And if someone starts challenging this or something gets proven wrong or whatever, then all of a sudden they're shunned, and then there's like this campaign to make them look like a bad person. And
Yeah, I think the best archaeologists, anthropologists are the ones that follow their intuition, and then that guides them to the fact, or to some sort of research that gives them what their intuition was leading them to. Those are your best researchers. And there are a few out there.
Yeah. Yeah, I think Graham Hancock's touched on that a couple times. Yeah. He's guided to a lot of the things that he ends up researching. That's another person that he started writing books, and the same thing happened to him. Everyone just started coming after him about how terrible of a person he was. And it's like, I guess that's how someone's real, is when people start coming after him.
Oh my gosh, maybe.
But I hope nobody comes after you.
Oh, you have to make yourself invisible. That's what I did.
I know, but I appreciate that. I just wish that wish more people could see your stuff, because to me it's just a trigger. It literally puts a face on it. When you're like, wow. Because when I saw your stuff firsthand, I was like, whoa, I've never seen anything like that before.
Yeah,
and to see it in person too, it's just like a whole other level too.
You can take it and share it, and when I post things on social media, just take it and share it and get it out there.
Yeah. And hopefully when the world starts functioning again, we can start meeting in public again, and more people can see your stuff.
I think the world is functioning really well. I think these Zoom connections are actually kind of cool.
Yeah, they are.
Because it makes it more personal. And I think that a lot of the, I was an observer when I went to a few of the Sasquatch conferences. I just went as an observer, just to watch people. That's what I do. And I just want to see more people telling their story. I want to see them sit in a round circle, and I want to see them have a talking stick, and then each one goes around and just tells their experiences and shares experiences. I think it's time to do that.
Yeah. Yeah, I totally agree. Yeah. That's actually like the Enumclaw conference that we were all at in 2019. That Friday night was when they allowed people to come up and tell their stories.
Mm-hmm.
And and Keith tried to get me to go up that night, and I was like, I'm still real shy and soft spoken. I'm not a very like outgoing person. I'm very quiet. And he was like, you should go up there and tell some of your stories. And I was like, nah, I'm just not ready yet. And like that night, I was camping by myself. That night, I was by the fire reading a book, and I heard, you need to start talking about this stuff. And I was like, okay. you know. Sure.
And
now
look
you-
at you now
Look at
and
you
what you're
now.
doing.
Exactly.
I know this is not, I'm still not comfortable doing this, you know.
Well, I
This
can tell you, I'm not either. I really had to find a voice to do this because I got the same thing was thrown to me too. You've got to start talking about this.
Yep.
It's one thing to have the visuals. The visuals
Mhm.
are wonderful, but you've also got to tell your story. So everybody needs to tell their story.
Yeah, they do, because that's the heart of the story. It's what you're sharing, your experiences. And, you know, for me, that was one of the most important things of my coming into the Bigfoot research world. It certainly wasn't because I researched, because I don't research. I'm not a researcher. I'm not a habituator. I'm somebody who tries to live with their neighbors in a good way. And we're all neighbors, is, you know, what my grandmother taught me. And it was important for me to share that aspect, even though I had been told all my life, we don't talk about this in public. We don't talk about this in public. And then boom, now you're telling me I got to talk about this in public. I mean, and I don't have a problem talking in public. That wasn't the issue. The issue was now I got to talk about something I'm not supposed to talk about.
Yeah.
You know, how do I do that?
Yeah.
And, you know, and it's all about, you just share it. Tell it like it is. Be yourself, regardless of what anybody else says or thinks. Be who you are. And, you know, as you learn more about yourself, then, you know, you begin to like who you are and what you're bringing forth. And so it's about what you're doing to help, not about who all hears you or what they all think about you or how they all talk about you. It's about bringing that story and sharing and giving other people their voice, because you stepped out and shared something. Now they can do that too. So that was really important to me.
Yeah.
And that's what you're doing now. You're bringing something out that is important, that we know. There's a reason that these elongated skulls and all of this is coming out, and the Mounds people and all of these things are being brought forward there to let us know who we are, where we've been, who we've known. You know, it's not just us. It's an amazing world and universe of all kinds of neighbors.
Yep.
Yeah, most definitely.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and the thing about talking about this stuff too is yeah, it doesn't do any good to hold it in and keep it like a secret, because you know, if you had never started speaking about your stuff, and if Marcia, if you had never started doing your art, or you know, Alex and Arla hadn't done their show, you know, like who knows where I would have been, because honestly, like their show opened me up to so many things. Your artwork opens me up to so many things, and it just like, it's amazing. And since I've just started talking about the stuff in the past couple of years, I've had people open up to me, and to me that's the most rewarding part is when I get like, and it's, I'm not expecting the whole world to open up to me or, you know, receive me openly, but it's like one by one, like that person I connect with, and they're like, oh my God, you know, like I really appreciate what you said because this happened to me, or what, like that's the big thing for me. So I'm not like I can't speak for you guys, but I mean, I'm not trying to become somebody, you know what I mean?
Mhm.
But
You already are somebody.
That's right.
well, I mean,
You already are somebody in the scheme of one of the people I know that has the biggest heart and cares about people. And I mean, you are somebody, and that's not being egotistical or anything else or bringing ego forth. You are somebody with a story that somebody needs to hear. And it's pretty much that simple. And past that, you're open to hear those stories and somebody else's story that may not even align with your story. It doesn't make any difference. You're just open to listen, to be there, and to share what you know to share, and then to help where you're led to help in the way that you're led to help.
Yeah, and it's important, like what we all talked about. So yeah, we all need to be more open in discussing these things, and we need to be open to other people discussing these things, and we need to create like a safe space for more people to be able to talk, because it doesn't do anybody any good for everyone to hold on to their stories, because there's so many cool stories out there, and there's so many cool things out there to learn about. And like what you guys are saying, we all have a piece to this puzzle. It's a giant puzzle, and if people are keeping their pieces in their pockets, like, we're never going to put it together, and
Absolutely.
so let's talk about it more, people.
Yeah, if you got something to talk about, let Sam and I know. We're interested. So that's why we're here, to give people a voice so that more things can be understood. And I mean, Marcia, having you on is so special, in so many ways, even though you're trying to be invisible. I mean, our show's not going to catapult you into the world. But there are going to be people who heard you speak that needed to hear you.
Yeah,
And that's
absolutely.
important.
Yeah.
And
I'm sorry, Tom touched on
I'm
this.
grabbing for something, that's why.
Oh, okay. Tom touched on this in the comments just now. It's not, the stories aren't always meant for us. It's like,
Right.
if someone tells us a story and you almost exactly know who it's supposed to be for. Like, I know who you need to talk to.
Right.
And so, yeah, like if Marcia's on our show, and there could be somebody watching right now who just needed to hear her, needed to see something she's doing. And yeah.
Yeah, they need to just see that white hair's okay. Go white.
Yeah.
It's okay to go white. Anyway, this is heading to Arla,
I cannot wait.
and that's a
I'm
story
like,
in itself.
oh my
so.
gosh, I get chills when I think about it. I'm like, oh boy, I'm already got enough stuff coming now. I got him. Oh, beware, guiding abundance podcast.
I had to show that. That's an artifact from one of the mounds, up the Newark mounds up in Ohio.
That's awesome.
Space.
Isn't it? Isn't it? It's just, it's gorgeous to me. It's just so.
Look
so
at that
much
head
there.
shape.
Mhm.
Yeah. Yeah. And the one skull that I have, which is called Two Bells, which is connected to the Star Nation people, has very much that elongated head. And he was found here where I walk. What are the odds of finding that, on just walking in the woods? Actually hearing somebody call you, and then you go off that way, and that's what you find. So yeah, I'm
really cool.
anxious to see what's coming.
Well, I think it would be great to have all of us get together and go for a hike and go for a walk and experience.
Oh, I
talk
second that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I second that.
Yeah. Get out and walk.
Yeah, I think that's kind of what I was touching on when I meant, like, when the world we could get back to a little bit of stuff like that, and being able to travel and go see each other again, and spend those times together. Because there's just, these Zoom calls are cool, but there's just something with being with your people and feeling the energy, and and then it just spreads and it just amplifies everything the more people you have with you. And I miss that part of everything, especially like with our campouts, and get everyone to sit around the fire and walk in the woods. We need to bring that back.
It's coming.
I know. I can tell too. Like it feels different already this year. It feels totally different. Just the energy wise, it already feels like everyone's like, we're on the verge of having the Roaring 20s part 2, I guess.
And if we project that out, then that's what we're going to get. And that's where we have to go. We have to manifest this. We have to project it out and create this. We are all co-creators of doing this. So
that's so important. Yep.
Yeah. All right. Well, you guys want to call it a show?
Yep, I think so. Oh my gosh, I can't wait to watch it again and listen to all of it over again. That's awesome.
Yeah, me too.
I'm very honored, and thanks for having me on. It was a lot of fun. I love sitting and sharing. So that was really good. Thank you both.
Yeah, well, thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you for planting all these seeds that you're planting, so that, and bringing your puzzle piece and to this, that is so important. Yeah, it's so important for things that are going on.
Yeah, super important. Is there anything, any kind of plugs you wanna give, or website information?
I'm not much of a plugger, but you can always visit my website. But it's, I would go to my Facebook page. I ended up with the longest website name. It's my name and my studio. And I'm like, oh my gosh, people are never going to get that. So just honestly, if you go to the Akashic Records and Google Marcia K Moore, and you'll find it. You'll find the website. Yeah.
Wonderful YouTube channel. Wonderful.
And you know what? That has been something over this last year that I said, I just love creating little videos, and I'm going to do this. I've got so much stuff. Just create it and get it out there in a way that is a little unexpected. So I love doing that. I'll be doing more of that.
They're amazing too. They're like this super professional, enjoyable thing that is just like, it's just amazing. You just have to check out our YouTube channel.
It's
really
fun.
Good.
It's really fun. And I always tell people I'm just using the simple tools. I have my phone, and then I have my software that's on my computer. Like I use my iPhone, and then I use iMovie, and that's what I'm editing with. It's no big deal, but it's amazing if you know your tools. It's amazing what you can do with simple tools.
Oh yeah.
The simple tools, like my sketching, it's just a Pilot pen. That's my favorite pencil, and a Pilot pen. I'm in heaven if you give me those tools. Those are great. So the YouTube page is fun. So that's another plug. Thanks, Darla.
You're welcome. I couldn't let that get by. So.
Yeah.
And then I guess look forward to the next Elongated Skull, because I'm going to reconstruct this, and we'll see how this works. We'll see.
That gives me chills.
I know.
We'll see how this goes.
Yeah, you got to get to that soon.
Okay. Okay.
All right. Well, thank you everyone for watching, and hope everyone has a good night, and love you all.
Love you too. Thank you so much. Really appreciate it.
Lots of love to you guys.
Yeah.
Good night.
Good night.
Good night.
See you guys.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.